So you've been invited to speak at a virtual conference because, everybody is doing everything virtually now because of our pandemic. And the organizers ask you, can you just send us a video of your talk, like pre-recorded, so we can just stream it so we don't have issues with the internet and people connecting, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, sure, let's roll. And then you start and then you realize, wow, this is actually pretty hard, right? All around me on the Twitters and on the LinkedIns and personal messages, people have been asking me, Tim, how do you make those videos? And because you have a bunch of YouTube videos, but you're also a veteran conference speaker, like how do you combine it all? And after like daily questions, I thought, you know what? I'm just going to write down a list with all the tips and tricks of the stuff that I know that can help you to make a really good pre-recorded conference talk. So this video has a lot of tips and tricks, and I'm going to go super fast. There will be chapter markers in the video description, because there's just so much to get through. You really want to have those markers to just jump to the stuff that you want to learn most about. Are you ready? Let's rock and roll. No matter how good your story is, how it looks and how it sounds are for some reason always the thing that the people will remember. Basically, a good talk will become a great talk with high production value. Because sad truth, how you are perceived by the audience, especially on film, is what they remember. And even if your story is freaking amazing, sometimes that doesn't matter, because if your audio, especially your audio, is not good, people will just not listen. They will not be interested. So that's why I'm giving you all those tips and tricks, because some things are super simple and will actually elevate everything like skyrocket. So this was actually the second intro. I don't know why I did that, but now let's go to general tips. Just a little thing, I might be looking to the side once in a while like that, because there's so many tips I have to refer to my notes. Let's start with the first tip. A video pre-recorded conference talk has to be a bunch shorter than an actual live conference talk. Because you know what, when you're live, you have an audience, you're all in one place, so people are kind of forced to watch. And that's a much easier way to connect. Right, it's all about the connection to the speaker. And you know what, when you're at home, you're watching a video, things are distracting. It's just really hard to connect to people and make them stick all the way through. So don't go for 45 minutes. I'd rather go for 20. Next, make your points in the first minute of the video, right? Make sure that the audience will learn why this talk, what will they learn, why is this a good subject, stuff like that, because hook them in the first minute or you'll lose them. Next, which is quite close, make sure that after that, introduce yourself, because when you're in real life, people can kind of come up and talk to you and it's kind of more personable, and on video it can be cold, it's harder, right? So make sure that you introduce yourself, so to connect to the audience as much as possible, that they know who you are. Next, speak slow and clear. I don't always do that, but I know it's very important. Audio is everything. And you know what? Because this is virtual, it's also global. People from all over the world are going to be watching those videos. So make sure that you are audible. Next, make sure, and this is a hard one, to be more lively on video than you are in real life. Like act like you are lively, like when you watch something in the cinema or when you're on stage performing like in an opera, you overact, right? You have to do the same with video, because we tend to, as speakers or as developers, go into the subject matter and then just focus on that, and then everything gets slow and monotone. Actually do the opposite. It should be more than you feel, and it's not easy, but work at it. Next, your slides need to look awesome, because people are literally going to inspect your slides on their phones or on their laptops all the time. It better look great. But with that in mind, don't put too much text on slides, because a lot of people will be on their mobile, so they're never going to read that, right? They want to see your face move and they want to see nice animations and bigger images. The same goes for code on slides. If you put a lot of code on slides, people will just not see it. So when you do that is actually have the code in a big font and take it completely out of context, simplify it to make the point. All right, that was it for general tips. On to the next. So now we are going to be talking about while you are recording, or when you are, if it happens live, stuff you have to think about. So these are all like Captain Obvious things, like open doors, but you cannot believe how many people forget about these things. Things like plug your laptop into a power source, right? Low battery causes a whole bunch of very bad things for live presenting or recording for that matter. Also have wired internet. I know that's not always easy, but it gets so much more stable. Next, find a quiet place to do your job, right? Interruptions shouldn't be allowed, because the moment you're interrupted, you're out of your flow and you have to start again, or you lose a take, or when it's live, it's even worse because you cannot fix it. Next, similar to interruptions, is turn off your notifications. You cannot believe how often I see people present, even in videos. Emails come in, Steam messages, Discord, Slack, whatever. Just turn it off. It's easy. Look professional, right? Same goes for when you show something in your browser. Don't have 10 tabs open, like a YouTube, a Netflix, or whatever. Just don't. Only have one tab open and just show what you want to be showing, because this just shows your professionalism. Every detail counts, right? Then some tips for if you record stuff in shorter takes, right? This is what I generally do. I generally say, okay, this is now the subject about these kind of tips. So I do one take, and if it's good, I keep it. If it's not, I do it again. If you do it this way, make sure that you don't just record one file of like 27 minutes with 16 takes in it, and then you have to remember which of the 16 takes was the right one, and you have to search. It takes a lot of time. So every time stop the recording and just record again, so you have like a little file that you know this is good. And then one last one, and we'll talk about audio and stuff a little bit later, but if we record with a little bit more fancy setup, so you have a separate audio stream and a separate video stream, make sure that you do something like this. Because if you do that before recording, you can later on sync the audio tracks between the different devices and everything is nicely in sync. Okay, that was it for tips while recording or presenting. On to the next. Let's talk about the harder stuff, but also the more juicy bits of this video. First, let's talk about the camera, how you focus on yourself, how you place yourself. Then we'll talk about light, and then about camera settings. A lot more complicated stuff coming after. Beware. Look at the chapter marks in the video to skip if you want to. So first of all, position yourself by the rule of thirds. Vertically and horizontally. You can see on the sides of me, there's like one third, another third, and then there's me. The same, like the top of my head is kind of in the last third. If you don't do this well, it can be an artistic choice, but generally just do this and it all works the best. Next is keep the camera, the best would be on eye level, right? So I'm kind of looking in my lens correctly now. It can be coming from above a little bit because people are used to that from game streamers that have their camera a little bit higher. Don't do the opposite though. So don't go down and let the camera look up to you, because that's how they portray serial killers in movies, and then they put like harsh lights and stuff. Don't do it. Be in the center of the frame and look at the camera the right way. Actually, this is a fun one. I'm reading here. Look at the camera when you present. Don't look at your slides. I was literally just looking at my notes while talking to you. Honestly, don't really do that. Of course, you have to sometimes, but when it counts, look in the lens. When you speak like slightly off topic or less when it counts, like the in-between stuff, it's cool to look at your slides because you know what's coming. But generally, look here. You know, this is how it goes. Then lastly, please, I guess this might be a pet peeve of mine, but I freaking hate it. Do not use AI to remove your background, right? Because it's just ugly. It really doesn't work, not yet. If you wanted to do it, and there are certain valid moments wherein you would do it is then use an actual green screen and light yourself correctly with super white bluish light, and then actually key yourself out. But don't have AI do it. Just don't. Don't. Let's talk about lights for a bit. I could speak for a week on lights. There's so much info out there. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to keep it simple. So first and foremost, do not have a big light source behind you. Not like those fancy small lights that I have, but like a big window. Because the moment you have a big window behind you, the camera is trying to expose for your face, but because there's so much light coming behind you, it cannot really find your face, and it's trying to do stuff, and it's just ugly. So instead, do the opposite. Have the light behind your camera, and then actually have the sun or whatever you use illuminate you rather than the camera, because it's just hard for cameras to deal with that. Even the most expensive film cameras have issues with that, right? So just don't do it. So blast your face with light, and if you have a bit more time or money or whatever brain space, you can do a bit more. Like I have like a little light here and a big light there, and they're really diffused, which means it's not sharp edges, but the light goes through like a white pane and it just diffuses nicely. That's why this kind of looks good, I think. It's not the best just yet. Anyways, that will come later when you guys donate to my Buy Me a Coffee page. I'll buy lights. Anyways, the last thing you should think about is what I see all the time is people actually buy a light, super happy, they put it on and they put it quite yellow, a bit warmish. So a low Kelvin, like 3400 Kelvin. But then they use the window on the other side to light the rest. But sunlight is a higher Kelvin, it's like 5000 or 5200, it's much more blue. So you're combining those colors, and then when it comes on your face, your camera makes that green. You don't want that. So the moment you have an extra light but you use the sun, match the Kelvins. And if you want to know more about that, you can just Google it and you'll figure it out. It's very easy. Yeah, that's it. Are you ready to get nerdy? Let's talk camera settings. So I know if you have a webcam, there's not that much you can do. I will link to a video that I've done about how you get your webcam to look good, but generally it's just add good light and that's kind of it. However, if you do have a camera, you're in luck. There's just like the light section before, there's a lot of things you can talk about for camera settings. Again, this is not that type of video, so I'm just going to go over a couple that I think you should do. I won't really explain them, and if you want to know more, just Google, basically. So, start with the fact that your camera has autofocus and focus on your face. If you don't have autofocus, set the manual exactly to the length of how far you are away from your camera. Don't focus on your microphone and not on your eyes. That will be very sad, you know. Next, double your shutter speed to the frame rate that you use. This can go quite technical, quite fast, but if your shutter speed is the same as your frame rate or lower, you will get, if I do this, you will get a whole bunch of motion blur. And that's generally not what you want. You want it to be more crisp. However that works, Google it. Next, ISO. ISO is awesome if you have a dark room and you want to actually still see some lights. You make the actual sensor more sensitive, but it also adds noise. You don't want noise. So put it as low as you can, and if it's still noisy, add more light. Of course, expose for your face with the right exposure settings. Use the lowest f-stop you can, because the lower your f-stop, the more light goes into the camera and onto its sensor, but also you get a better, hopefully, depends on your camera obviously, bokeh, right? There's a bit blurry behind me. That's because of my low f-stop. Frames per second. Just do 24, 25 or 30, but don't go up. There's no need. Next, don't go over HD quality. You can do 4K because you're a nerd and it's all fun. But you know what? Those conferences will just stream your talk, right? It's never going to be 4K. They won't have the bandwidth. There's no need for that. So this might have been the quickest how to set up your camera section in any video. But with those settings, you'll be probably fine. Anyways, on to the next. Let's talk about audio for a bit. You know what? Audio is probably the most important part of a video. If you ever seen a video with bad audio, you probably just stopped watching quite fast. Even if you really wanted to watch it, it's just super annoying. Right, so to get good audio, to start, what you should do as a base, okay, I'm stumbling over my word, but we'll continue. Find a room that's quiet. It's a sound treated room. This is really hard to do, and people charge a lot of money to soundproof rooms. But what I mean by this is, if you are in a room that's completely empty and it has like a stone floor and a high ceiling, the sound can bounce around a lot. So currently I speak into my mic, which is just here, but it's pretty close, right? But then when I speak, the sound bounces against the wall behind the camera and it comes back into the mic. But because it travels further, it comes in later. Right, so there's not just one beam of voice going in here, it comes from all over the place. And the more your room reflects sound, the worse it's going to sound. And this is something you really have to take care of. And you know what, this room is not that good. So I have a rug on the floor here, I have extra blankets, I have some crap behind my screen so it doesn't reflect as much. Yeah, it's not easy, but there are some things you can do to actually make it better. Right, so for example, have your microphone really close to your face. Like this one is actually really close. I'm not going to move it now because otherwise we don't have the audio that's the same every time. But if I speak very closely, you have a very nice radio voice, right? And this is cool about these kind of microphones. The closer it is, the better it sounds. So if you don't have a fancy mic, just get like your headset from your phone or from a gaming headset or something. Never ever rely on the microphone in your webcam or your computer because they are far away and they're generally crappy. Just get like little headphones with a little mic. That's always better. Okay, then so one last thing is then when you start recording and you have separate audio tracks potentially, because you might be recording the audio separately from your video, do this. I know I already said this one in the beginning, but it's super important because you later on want to find that spike in the audio track and align everything. So when you speak, it's completely synced with what you recorded. You know what, there's a whole bunch of stuff in my notes that I'm looking at now, like doing a low pass filter EQ, match the loudness, compress, gate. Man, there's so much stuff. If you want, I'll just put some really nice links in the description for you to learn more. That's it for audio. We are almost there, I promise. So in this section, we will talk about editing and recording tips. So this video is one of those where you have a lot of talking head, right? So you see me speak like that to you. In conference talks, that can be really cool, right? So sometimes you just don't show your slides and show the talking head to have a bit more impact. That's relatively easy to do, but there's a whole bunch of other things you can also do, right? You can just have like the picture-in-picture thing that you see all the time, like I am small in the corner and my slides are big. You can also just do only slides sometimes to make that kind of impact. Maybe you're showing a video. Or you go 50-50, 50% you, 50% slides. I do this all the time. And just keep changing this up to, don't have the same thing all the time because people, I don't know why, but apparently people need to be woken up all the time. So you'll see also in the edit of this video that I kind of change it up quite a bit to keep you focused. Right? And the same thing is like when I do this talking head stuff, sometimes I zoom in a little bit and then I zoom out a little bit. There's like these little tricks you can do, and that's actually really important. Other things to break up the monotone like talking head thing is maybe add a bit of background music that doesn't interfere too much. And lastly, make an actual intro, like do 2 sentences, show your logo, do a bit of music and then go. It gives a bit more professionalism. Wow, that was a fast one. Next. So now that you have all the information on how to speak, how to put the lights, how to use the camera, how to edit, we actually didn't discuss software just yet because you have actually going to have to edit this thing, right? So let's first talk about stuff to record your screen. And there's a whole bunch of software out there. I'm just going to give you my opinions of what I like to use at the moment and some alternatives. I might get a bunch of flame for this. You know what? I don't care. I'm just going to tell you what works for me and you can see if that works for you. So generally, to record my screen, even though there's a million pieces of software, I always use open broadcasting software, which is OBS. OBS can do a lot of stuff. It can live stream, it can do like Photoshop for video basically, and then live. But I use it to record because it just has so many options, right? And what is good about it, it can also just capture your webcam and capture part of your screen and capture your browser and have overlays, and you can do whatever you want. So it's kind of a one-stop shop. It's not that hard. Just dive in and see. It's actually really easy to use once you get it. Next, actually things like ScreenFlow or Ecamm Live, yes, live, but also for recording, are also great options if you want a paid version of something with better support, right? Okay, so for more control, what I would suggest, if you can, record your camera, your audio, and your screen capture separately. So if you have that, nothing is baked in, nothing is final. You can actually switch things around completely. If you have that possibility, try to do it, right? So if you want to record your audio separately, you can go expensive and use Adobe Audition. That's one I use. You can also use Audacity or just GarageBand, who are free generally. They work pretty well. Okay, now for actually editing the videos. I use, and I'm quite convinced by, DaVinci Resolve. DaVinci Resolve is basically a professional grade program, but they have a free version that has like 99% of the paid version. And you know what? I just used it. I'm like, okay, I'm done. Anything I want to do, like some sort of like 3D animation or just editing, or I can do it with this program, and it's free and it runs well, right? So I would urge you to check it out. Then of course, if you want to go really simple, you have things like iMovie, works really well. You can also check out Adobe Rush, which it's called Rush because it's very easy to do quick edits with. So I know I didn't do too much in depth about those programs, but they really work and they're relatively simple. And this video is already very long. So if you have any questions on any of the things we talked about today, there's my Twitter. Just reach out and DM me directly. We are a community, we help each other, and this is my way of giving back, because I have experience of doing like about 50 videos now, and I've started with trash, and now I'm like mid-level. It can always be better, but I've learned so much, so I thought it was time to do this video now. Anyways, thanks for watching all the way to the end. Check out the sponsors. Thank you. And I will see you next time.